You know when someone's getting ready to say something about race, and you know that it's about to get interesting whenever they say, well, I'm not a racist. But, yeah, in that moment, you know that the conversation's about to get very interesting. Personally, I hate that. I hate that little disclaimer. I don't mean to say anything offensive, but right before they throw in something that's truly offensive. You know, actions speak louder than words, but words are actions. And also, personally, for me, I particularly hate whenever they throw that little disclaimer out right before they say something bad about homosexuals. Be they gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, transsexual, in a transition period between any of the spectrum of homosexuality and heterosexuality. I say this because I tend to talk about gay rights a lot. And a lot of times when I talk to people, they're trying to be very PC about how they actually feel and what they say whenever they're talking about this topic. But I don't like being PC. Now, I like to debate. I will debate anyone over almost anything. I love it. But don't start off with that little buffer that says that whatever your opinions may be, that I can't use that to judge who you are. Now, I gave that little buffer because I'm sick and tired of a lot of injustices that I tend to see day in and day out. And I think a lot of people need to realize that there's a time coming where eventually you're going to have to take a stand on this issue. You know, don't be a wussy. Don't be a hypocrite. We've got tons of lawyers and politicians for that. I want someone to give me one good reason why the Constitution of the United States should not be expanded or have an amendment added into it to protect any American regardless of sexual orientation. Now, don't get me wrong. I've heard the arguments. I've heard them from friends, from enemies. I've heard them from politicians. I've heard them from Bible thumpers. I've heard them from almost anyone. I've even heard these arguments a lot of times from the converted. Those are the people who were gay, but now through going to church, they are now saved and straight and converted. The church tends to call these people miracles. I personally want to call them traitors, but I do understand their situation. A lot of times it's out of fear or just being naive that they keep putting up with this facade. The religious reasons for this seem to be without bounds. I get hit with Leviticus 18:22 all the time. That's the one that calls homosexuality an abomination. When I get that argument, it's usually from a Bible literalist. These are the people who believe in the absolute literal word of the Bible, who believe that because that one verse is in there, that it gives no room to maneuver whatsoever for any homosexual rights. That's when I play a little game that I call the literal interpretation of the Bible. That's when I throw out verses that they don't particularly like. I can point out where Elijah was picked on because he was bald by a bunch of kids and cursed them. Then God sent down bears to maul them. Or whenever the Bible writes that a woman's hand should be cut off if she ever grabs a man's privates in anger. Okay, that could work. No, that's still bad. That's a woman's hands, okay? And then they push back. Whoa, that's the Old Testament. We have the New Testament now. Well, the Ten Commandments are in the Old Testament. Should we throw those out too? Which leads to my real argument, that you can't cherry pick the Bible. You can take it as the absolute Word of God. But you have to accept everything that's in the Bible as the Word of God. Or you could just accept that it was written by men. Men from different areas, with different opinions, with different political ideals, who were trying to do something great. But all in all, it is a book written by men. And if that's true, if the Bible was written by men, then you have to accept that there are a lot of things in the Bible that are the opinions of those men. That what they put down in those Gospels was entwined with the things that were important to them at that time. I also hear the argument a lot that God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Okay, pop quiz for you. When Noah put animals onto the ark, what kind of animals did he put on there? He put a pair of each kind, a male and a female. Well, why do you do that? Oh yeah, it's because they need to reproduce to fill the world up with that kind of animal. So if God made the very first couple, of course He's going to make a man and a woman. You can't populate the damn earth with two men. You know, if you use that argument of Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, then you have actually probably not thought about this thing for longer than 20 seconds, or you have a serious lack in the ability to understand the fundamentals of human reproduction. I also tend to hear the argument that gay marriage will ruin the institution or the sanctity of marriage. Really? Is that really where you want to go? Because the last time that I checked, the statistics said that 50% of all marriages end in divorce. that 45 to 55% of women and that 50 to 60% of men will cheat on their spouses at least one time during their marriage. So it seems that straight people are doing a bang-up job of protecting the sanctity of marriage, even the marriages that have nothing to do with sanctity at all. I mean, does anyone really notice that marriage requires no sanctity whatsoever? Sanctity means the quality of or state of being holy or sacred. But I could get a marriage license, go down to a county clerk, and get married. I don't need to go to a church or employ a pastor. I can write my own vows. In fact, if churches disappeared altogether, the institution of marriage would be alive and well, just be taking place down at the county clerk's office by full-time employees. Now, sitting right beside the religious arguments, I've heard lots of secular arguments also, such as gays can't have kids. Well, I guess you got me there. They can't. But men with vasectomies, men with vasectomies can't have kids either. Should they not be allowed to get married? I've met women who were born barren. Should they not be allowed to get married? I've got a good friend of mine here that was born without fallopian tubes. Are you going to picket her wedding? I didn't think so. But really, is not being able to have kids really such a horrible thing? The population of the Earth is well over 6 billion people. It's estimated that it's going to reach 7 billion sometime in early, I think, February 2012. Now, at a 1% growth rate, the population of the Earth will grow and double every 70 years. That means in 2082, we'll be at 14 billion people. Right now, there's lots of people on the Earth that don't have enough food to eat. We here in the United States usually do, unless you're looking at the hungry or the homeless. But basically, we have plenty of food for us. There's lots of places in the world where that is not the case. Kids are starving to death. At some point, when you reach a huge number of people, like 14 billion, before the next millennium turns, you're going to start hitting a really big important wall where it says there's only so many people that the Earth can sustain. Now, I'm well aware that that seems like a mean argument. Gays not being able to have kids, I mean, I feel for them because I've got lots of friends that are gay that would like to have kids. But mechanics are mechanics. And if they don't have the option to adopt, then that's just a reality that I'm sure they've all had to accept in their own way anyway. Now, here's the doozy of an argument. This is the one that still blows my mind every time I hear it. It says, well, if you let gay men marry, or women marry, well then what's next? Men are going to want to marry animals. How the hell do you come up with that in your head? What goes on in your brain whenever you actually say that out loud? That because a woman wants to marry a woman, or a man wants to marry a man, then next a man's going to want to marry a dog? Look, gay marriage is legal in Canada, Spain, Norway, South Africa, the Netherlands. Is there some epidemic in Canada that I haven't heard of men trying to apply for marriage license to marry dogs? I'm fully convinced that that argument is proof positive that number one, a slippery slope argument should never be used in any argument, and two, that we need to put a lot more money into the public school system. And also I've heard the argument where people will say, well, I just don't want to see it. And how did that become their problem?